we were talking a little bit about it offline, with our Facebook friends. Mark, do you want to say a little bit about, what you were starting to talk about?
So we started to talk about Hetty, who was part of a community, who had another community living across the street, but were nice to her. But yet there was another part of that community, a bigger part of that community, that was not going to be so nice to her. But those that were part of that community were nice to her. So what I was starting to talk about before we came back on the air was very similar to the race conversation that we've had over the last few months, is the difference between treating everyone equally, right? We've had the conversation like, do we treat everyone equally? Well, no, we don't. We're going to treat everyone individually, right? Not based on what group they're from or what pigment they have. We're going to treat them based on who they are and how they treat me, really, right? Because that's kind of the relationship that we have with them. And am I going to treat them the same as I am the person that's in their group? Most people will. A lot of people will. But if we take a step back and say, well, this individual is not like all of the people in that group, or my perception of what all those people are like in the group. This is an individual, and this individual just saved my life.
But I think it takes enormous courage to say I'm who I am, even though I'm part of this group,
Right.
because the group has such power. A group has such power. If I'm not part of that group, if I don't align myself with it, I could get kicked out. I could be one of those other people. And I think that's part of the fear, another aspect of fear. But it's still an I am. Look, Nazi Germany had an I am. I don't like it, but I want to understand it. And I think so many people have spent so much time, and there's so many books looking at what was happening in the social domain of Germany that gave them a platform that a person like Hitler could become a leader. And it's important to understand these things, not to judge it, but to understand it. Because if we don't understand these things, aren't they potentially just going to repeat again? It had to do with fear. It said that group of people are taking something from you, and therefore you have to do something and stop them. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot. We had a whole series on community, right? And the tribal nature of community, right? We don't want to be left out. There's protection within the community. There's safety within the community, and God forbid I'm not part of that community. That community might turn on me.
Right, that's right. But the other side is, why do we need to limit the size of our community? I mean, why isn't there always room for one more? I mean, there certainly is at my dinner table. There's always room for one more, because there's another opportunity, another conversation, another moment that we can laugh about something, another moment that we can cry together about something. There should always be room for one more. Why not?
Right.
What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, because if we're not counting ourselves, because, I've heard I don't know how much weight you put on it, Dr. Joe, but the idea that our tribe can consist of no more than 200 people. But isn't that 100,000-year-old rule?
Yeah,
And
that's right.
we can change that, right?
Right. And we have to. And when we had Jonathan Kahn on talking about implicit bias and race on the brain, he was very clear and said, we can't just hide behind the biological domain anymore, because we have created social systems that systematically disenfranchise people. And we have to be responsible. We have to change those rules. Why would we need to do that? And then when we do it, why are we so astonished that there's a whole group of people who feel disenfranchised? Well, of course they do, because that's what we created. So why can't we do something about it? And this is part of the value thing. I talk about this a lot. And I was thinking the other day, you know, everybody wants to feel valuable. And at any moment in time, we can remind someone of their value. I've spoken about this before. And then whenever you do that, you increase your own value. But we're really good also at devaluing. We're good at taking things away from people. And when we do that, we should not be astonished that the other person has a response, because now they are feeling less valuable. And that activates the limbic system, my fight, flight, freeze response, because all of a sudden I'm in danger. So I was thinking, what if we just acknowledged that there are some times that we do that? It's our I am at times to make somebody feel less valuable, even if it's unintentional. But the way we can correct it is by giving them back something that we took, even if we didn't think we took it. I mean, I know last week, I really annoyed one of my family members. Unintentionally, I said something that got them annoyed. And I initially was defensive. I didn't mean to do that, you know. And then I thought about it. I said, you know what? It doesn't matter. Because they felt less valued. And even though it wasn't my intention, I will remind them of their value. I'll sort of put back what is not there. That's something I would really like you guys to comment on. I mean, is that still selfish? Or is that saying, this is altruism? This is us doing something to restore what was lost, what was taken. What do you think?
Well, is there, this is more philosophical, but what is altruism if we get a sense of pride and a sense of satisfaction and a sense of value from it? Is selfishness bad in that sense?
Well, maybe altruism was the wrong word, because you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of people have said altruism is sort of phony, because what you're really doing is giving something to somebody else with the hope that later on in the future you get something back. Right? So is it really altruistic, or is it sort of planful and thinking, okay, you know, you never know what's coming down the road, so I want to be prepared and have as many people that I
and it's a good thing, because I never liked the sentiments that, like, for example, right now with the fight for, you know, equality, civil rights, the sentiment that, oh, it's not about you though, just remember that. And I'm like, isn't it? Anytime we get involved, of course it's about us, because you have a role in this and you should feel good about it. That's a major motivation for a lot of people, and it's one that is beneficial. Is it not?
Go ahead, Mark.
How often is it a selfish motivation? I mean, it's, you know, we've talked about this with charity, right? You feel good being charitable. You know you're doing good. Is it selfish to be charitable because of the great feeling it gives you?
Perhaps if it's for attention. That's the only negative I can see.
No, we've talked about this with respect to just limit it to oxytocin. You know, not the look at me, I'm being charitable person, but it feels so good internally to be charitable that it's almost selfish to be charitable, right? So I'm going to be charitable so I can get that good feeling. Not that I'm going to get on the news and tell everybody how charitable I'm being, but the feeling, the innate feeling of, you know, that positive emotion that you get from being charitable. Is it actually selfish to be charitable?
Well, I don't know. I don't think that feeling pleasure is necessarily something that's selfish. I mean, for instance, I feel enormous pleasure that we have all these sponsors, you know, and so I would like to give them the opportunity to show what they do, and it's charity because they're supporting our show. And we were talking about charity and whether, you know, somehow it's selfish to feel good when you give to others. I think I'm not sure it's selfish as much as the positive reinforcement that our brains have developed. Because if it didn't feel good to do something for someone else, we would not be able to survive as a social group.
Right.
We would just be, you know, isolated and competing and not cooperating, and it would be everyone for themselves. So it makes absolute sense that it feels really good when you help somebody else. And that is just the most amazing thing. I get this feeling every day when I work with my patients. And Mark, my guess is you get this every day when you work with your clients. And Tom, I hope you get this every day when you work with us. So, right? It just feels great. And then of course there's Ben, who's helping everybody there in the studio. So
it's gratification, right? But what we were talking about when we rolled into that, or we backed into that, was, you know, everything we do is arguably for self-interest, self-purpose, selfishness. Right?
Well,
even if you're doing, that's what I was saying. So even if you're doing it for someone else, you may be doing it because it feels good. Right?
Okay, so this gets to the heart of a book by Richard Dawkins way back in the 1970s called The Selfish Gene. And his hypothesis, his thesis was just that, Mark, that everything we do, everything is merely to get our DNA into the next generation. And that it's all selfish, and that everything comes down to these chromosomes and nucleic acids controlling things, so they're just getting into the next generation. And you know what? I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And the reason, first of all, is genetic mutation. So chromosomes are not necessarily getting the exact same copy of chromosomes into the next generation. As a matter of fact, we know that if that happens for too long, that species, that whole group, cannot adapt. So it's not that I have to get my DNA into the next generation. What it is something that is about combining who we are. We are one group. And then we sort of divide into these little fractions. And that's what's happened now. But if we keep doing this, who's going to survive this? You know? I mean, we've got the racial thing. We've got COVID. And let's not forget climate change. You know, if we don't address climate change, none of the other stuff is going to matter. Because there's not going to be a climate for us to survive in.
We got a big,
not comfortably.
We got a big thing coming up in November too, which is causing a lot of divisiveness.
What's that? World Series? Is World Series in November?
That must be it.
No, Dr. Joe.
We're talking about the election in the
are.
United States here?
So there's groups forming, there's lines being drawn, and is everyone looking at everyone as their individual self or as their group?
Are we ready to really talk about this on the Dr. Joe
We
show?
need a 2-hour special at least.
All right, we'll do a 2-hour special.
All right,
You know what?
next guest.
I think you know, we can't always just sort of avoid it. So absolutely, that is part of what's happening. And there's division, and there's fear, and there's a sense that if one group wins, the other group loses, as opposed to saying, wait a sec, what does united mean? What does the United States of America mean? It's not the divided States of America. It's the United States. Because we came together for freedom. We didn't get it right immediately. A lot of people were disenfranchised. But I'd like to think that we're learning and we're growing and we're doing something about it. It is important, though, to understand why there is this division. If we don't understand it, we cannot change it. We cannot come together, because one group will always feel that the other group has more or is trying to take something, as opposed to saying, this is what being united means. If you don't have enough, let me share what I have. We're all going to be happier. I mean, if I share something with you, I get less anxious that you're going to try to take it from me. And you have less need to try to take something from me because I've already shared it.
Stretch the kindness, rush with madness, is it sadness or just a show?